Welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
I'm Shannon Lawrence.
And I'm MB Partlow.
Quick content warning before we get started. This podcast may contain language and disturbing content, so enter at your own risk.
Hello.
Hi. Hi there.
Hello.
I watched Beast with Idris Elba. It was on Peacock, even though it was just in the theater.
How was it?
Okay. I have a thing about movies that turn real life animals into monsters and don't have a reason for it. And I felt this one, first of all, made very clear that this was one particular lion. Mm-hmm. Something had happened, and that is why this lion was suddenly killing people.
Okay.
And that there were a good pride of lions right here, and they make sure... if it's even-handed, I see it mostly with wolves.
Yes.
Wolves are monsters, and I'm like, okay, find me an article about a case in the United States. I get in Europe, there were different wolves, and shit happened, but in the United States, I challenge you to find me how many people have been killed by a wolf or even maimed by a wolf in the U.S. Because it
doesn't happen.
No, you're more likely to die by cow. So, literally, because I think you're more likely to die by cow than shark, too. So... I'm always very tentative going into something like this. Mm-hmm. And I will say there's a lot of hard to watch scenes, and I felt the resolution was fair and made a positive point, but it was hard to watch. And it's hard to watch Idris Elba getting torn apart by a lion, because boy, does he get mauled. But it was good. Oh. I liked it. It was good. Emotionally, it was a little rough for me.
I don't think it sounds like I would particularly enjoy it at this moment in time. Although I love Idris Elba, but...
And I also and oh my God, I'll never get his name right. I'll never remember. There's a South African actor. He plays Murdoch in the A-Team movie. I've seen him he's in District 9. He's in all the stuff by that director.
I know who you mean.
It's Charlton Copeland or something like that.
Okay, yeah,
He is South African. I was surprised because... a South African is not my favorite accent, and part of that may be an emotional issue with South African, because colonialism, but it's flatter, and again because I do accents and shit, right? And so I pay way too much attention because I've always been fascinated by the differences and how you have this region, but within it there's this poor neighborhood has this accent, and the upper crust. He actually has a very pleasant South African accent to the point that I looked him up yesterday because I was like, well, that's not South African. Is that like a northern? That's somewhere else. And look, no, he's South African, but he's from Johannesburg. So now I have that information to be like, but I don't know what his income level was. Like, I don't know if he was richer or poorer or whatever. So I don't have that information yet. I should have gotten into linguistics because nobody gives a shit about this. But anyway, he has a very pleasant accent. Sometimes I can't stand the accent that some people from there have. And anyway, he's a great character in that too. I really like that actor. I mean, he's not in a ton of stuff yet, but I like him. And just everybody gets beat up, man. But I like a Beast horror movie. I just don't want them bastardizing an animal that people, because when people are afraid of things, they kill them. That's my thing.
Did you see a few years ago, they made a series out of James Patterson's book Zoo?
Yeah. I watched a couple episodes.
So I think Lucy and I watched that. It kept coming up on the screen. Was it in Zimbabwe? I'm trying to remember.
Zimbabwe.
And it just was so we'd look at each other and go, meanwhile, in Zimbabwe. But we watched the first season of that. We watched that together. And because it kept getting more and more absurd. And so she went back off to college, and I read the book.
Yeah.
And she came home and I said, I'm not watching any more of this because I read the book and I'm done. I was like, they veered so far off. And I get it. With a TV show, they're trying to keep it going.
Yeah.
But I'm like, develop a new fucking storyline. Don't beat the old one to death.
Did you watch My Best Friend's Exorcism yet?
I have not. And did we discuss that on here?
I don't know.
Who have I talked to about that?
Because I watched it the night before. So we might have actually.
Because I was thinking now that I will watch the movie before I reread the book.
Yes, that was what you said. So I remember having that conversation now. Yes, it's so far off from the book.
Oh.
It's so far off. I mean, you can see little traces of it. You're like, oh, yeah. But yes, so we did. So we won't belabor that one.
Okay.
But that my point was just how far off
I did get the Final Girl support group.
Well, that's good. I've read
I haven't
that.
read it yet.
Wait,
but
have I read that one? Fuck's sake. I don't remember anymore. I spent the last month reading horror comedies for the workshop, so I got to read something different.
And I had a spell of time. It was probably a month where I read like 20 Agatha Raisin novels.
That's right. I remember that.
I was just head down into it, and a friend of mine is reading them out because I keep passing them to her. And she was like, I hate her next door neighbor, James. And I'm like, yeah, you're not ever going to change your mind on that one. Spoiler alert. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's a very it surprised me because I didn't realize I needed that at that moment. They are very formulaic. And, but at the same time, it's kind of the reverse of, you always get some schlub of a private investigator who has poor hygiene and he's just doesn't take care of himself and he's a slob, and women are throwing themselves.
Right. Yeah.
At him. So in this one, the woman is described. Now she's not at that point. But over the course of years, I mean, in 18 novels, she's still in her early 50s. And she's not described as the most conventionally attractive woman. But yet all these incredibly gorgeous men are just falling all over themselves to throw themselves. Now, sometimes it's because they're guilty. They're trying to distract her with their masculine wiles. You can't see this. I'm holding my arms up and waving them.
You're basically doing the change the light bulb dance from the Indian dance. You're twisting your hand.
I've never heard it.
You've never?
I have never heard of the change the light bulb
So was it
dance.
a lot of the Indian dance, like Bollywood dance, was introduced into Zumba when I was doing it? I was doing it like a couple times a week because I loved it. And God, I wish I was still in that kind of shape.
Right?
I had kids then and I was in that shape. I'm gone now. But anyway, and so they'd always say, change the light bulb because you're twisting your hand around like that. And I'm like, I'm sure that's not what it's called in India.
And that's no, because the hand movements are very precise.
Yes, they are. And
very,
you've got your fingers here like this really. And they would do that sometimes, but there was the one that was the
change the light
bulb.
No, I was just trying to signal masculine wiles.
Mission accomplished.
Yes, I do have quite a masculine energy about me today. We have lost our minds.
That's
so thank you for tuning in.
Lost implies we had them.
We did.
When?
I don't know, at some point.
Oh, well.
Somebody said, back when I had a big girl job. I just laughed and I was like, we've all had big girl jobs.
That's funny. And back when I had a big girl job, I could see that being like, I could have said that when I was a stay-at-home mom or whatever, right? Or like the billion little jobs I tried to do.
Exactly.
But
you do have a big girl job now.
I do have a big girl job, right?
You do. I do not.
But that's okay. When you're writing for the paper.
That's true. That is true.
It's a big girl job. It's a big girl. This is a weird conversation. I felt like a grown-up adult when I parked my side-by-side on the back of the trailer up at the mountain.
That was magnificent.
Up at the cabin. I know it was.
I feel like we have so far in this episode probably made Amy spit water on her computer screen 3 times.
That, you know what? That should be our goal every episode.
Yep. At the end of every episode, we would like a tally of how many times we made you snort embarrassingly or spit water, or
yes,
if you've actually choked, that's bonus point.
Bonus points.
Oh, all right. Shall I jump in?
It's because our self-esteem isn't based upon that. The choke meter.
What is this self-esteem of which you speak?
Yeah, I don't know. I lost that years ago.
That with the fucks that I give, they're all gone.
Huh.
Do you know, that has become, I did not know that at this point in my life, the most useful response I would have for every situation is, huh.
I want to make a joke that I know would make you laugh, but it's probably not something that we have to put out on the podcast.
Is it the one I'm thinking?
Yes.
I believe that was my response. Was,
Yeah, there we go.
huh. All right,
All right, you start.
This is great to go from hilarity into this, because this is not, I'm not doing a funny one. This is a monster. It's not mayhem. It is mayhem, but it's brutal. It's
mayhem.
Gory, gross mayhem.
Ooh, yay! My favorite kind, though.
With a chewy center. So we all know I am very flippant. So.
What?
Right? I know.
I feel like you should have warned me about that before we started this whole, podcast.
Flippant, not flatulent.
That I would really expect you to let me know. We're just here in my office, no problem.
Because I do have the sense of humor of a 10-year-old boy. Keep it in a jar. Anyway, humor, my coping mechanism. But there's not a lot to laugh at in this one. So, today's tale of evil begins in July of 1946 in Sacramento, California, when Gerald Armand Gallegos was born. His mother was a hamster. And his father smelled elderberries.
Oh, Jesus. And your father smelled elderberries.
In case there are any Monty Python fans, I swear to God, that is the only funny thing I could put in this whole thing. So in reality...
Did you write it on there?
I did. I wrote, because I was trying to write this guy's history, and I wrote his mother, and was a hamster just flowed out of my...
Oh my God. Proceed.
Okay. Gerald Armand Gallegos. His mother was a sex worker.
That's not funny.
I'm not laughing. You
I know I am, but it's not funny. God damn it.
You're not just laughing. You're like, oh, you're going to have fun editing this.
That's if I edit it. We haven't had hilarity in a few.
That's true. Okay. His father. It doesn't matter now what I say, you're going to laugh. Okay, his father, who was Gerald Albert, who he was estranged from, had his own infamy because in 1955 he was the first man executed.
Positive smell.
Possibly. He was the first man executed in a Mississippi gas chamber.
Awesome.
Yeah.
One of my relatives was the last in Oklahoma or Indian Territory or something. It's cool.
Cool. So his father's offense was killing a police officer during a prison escape. Fucker. Right? So not an auspicious beginning. He was arrested for robbery at the age of 10.
Mm.
The one I'm talking about, not his dad. At the age of 13, he sexually assaulted a 6-year-old neighbor, for which he served time in some kind of juvenile detention facility. Over the next several years, he was arrested 23 times and served time in prison for robbery.
And if we went and we added up how much time he served for all of that, and the fact that they didn't figure out that this was a building issue or keep him in for any real... Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool.
So, and I apologize. There are a lot of dates because that was the only way to organize this. Because some of the stuff I read just hopped back and forth, and it would be it would start talking about his crimes, then it would talk about his marriages, then it would talk about his other crimes, then it would talk about his other marriages. How the fuck does a guy like this find all these women to marry him?
That was the thing.
He must have had charisma falling out of his ears.
Some of these people. And I'm like, women hate me and so I'm going to kill women. Like the last episode.
Right.
Women hate me. I'm going to kill women. But he was married twice.
Yeah.
Somebody liked him. How many people do you want to like you in one lifetime?
Yeah.
So you don't have to kill them about it.
So, in December of 1963, I'm not going to sing the song. At age 16, Gerald married a 21-year-old 4 months later, his daughter was born. So I think we can figure out why they got married.
Yeah.
This was 1963, after all. When they divorced, and here's what I cannot figure out, he got custody of his daughter, which makes you wonder about the mom.
How bad was she that him with his record?
And it also makes you wonder about the court system. So he immediately sent the child to live with his mother. I have omitted her name. She's going to come into play later because it appears that he started sexually abusing his daughter at a young age. And I'm not piling onto that.
No.
So same thing you had in some of the stuff you did last time. It's like, there's some people there's
some people I'm like, I'm going to say his name 20 times so y'all remember.
27 even. And some people, and some of them I'm going to give a first name only. So, July 1966, Gerald marries a 24-year-old waitress. The marriage ended less than a month later among allegations of abuse and threatening her with a knife. A little over a year later, he married again, and the marriage again crumbled around the 1 month mark, again because of abuse, because of physical abuse. March 1969, he marries a 19-year-old woman in Reno, Nevada. And this time, she was pregnant before the marriage ended. Care to guess when? A month later. Yep.
At least he started that. I don't know how. Sometimes it takes him a while to start, right? And it goes so slow. An abuser.
Yes.
Because they don't usually, mentally, but start abusing them till they have them in their possession, kind of.
This woman, her family refers to Gerald as Jekyll and Hyde. So apparently he could be very charming.
But that's the thing. They're always like, I just lost control. I just did this. But they know enough to behave until, say, that marriage or they're moved in with them or whatever.
Yes. So I can't confirm this. I wasn't able to confirm this, but at the time it was written, that daughter does not know the identity of her father.
Oh, good.
So, and I don't blame her family for that at all. And so that's why, in this case, even if I knew it, I wouldn't tell you the daughter's name. So that was March of 1969. In October of 1969, Gerald and his half-brother are arrested for the second time for armed robbery. They escaped from the county jail and were recaptured 4 years later, and Gerald was sentenced to 5 years. Here's the thing with Gerald and his whole freaking family. What kind of jails did they have? Because he and his dad and his half-brother are always escaping.
Were they white? So they're not getting long sentences and they're escaping and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So in 1974, when he gets out of prison, he marries another 19-year-old woman. This time they stayed together until they separated in 1977. So this is like 3 years. 2.5 to 3 years they were together. But in the fall of 1977, he met a twice-divorced woman 10 years his junior at a poker club where they immediately hit it off. So at this point in time, I would like to point out, he's 28, so she's 18, and she's twice divorced. So her name was Charlene Adele Williams. She was born in October of 1956 in Stockton, California. And by all accounts, she had a very loving and supportive family. So they did I was able to find this psychiatric evaluation on both of them. And with her, they go through and I can't even recount all of the questions, but they talk about childhood abuse, sexual abuse, all this stuff. None of it. She had none of it. She started using narcotics, not just drugs, but she started using narcotics at the age of 12. And they believe that's when she started drinking as well. She struggled in school, and apparently there were rumors that she was either promiscuous or was accused of, she was teased and called slutty. Was she? Who knows? Why ask her? So there are some reports that Gerald had difficulty
oh my God.
achieving and maintaining an erection. Insert phrase there. And then he fantasized about finding a perfect love slave. Apparently, it was all the woman's fault. He needed the perfect love slave, and then he wouldn't have any of these issues.
Yeah.
This led to physical and mental abuse of Charlene because he would berate her, and obviously everything was her fault. So in early 1978, now remember, they just got together in the fall of 1977. He came home from work early, or he may have been fired. He had a lot of different jobs. He worked most often as a bartender or a truck driver, and he would work and get fired and work it. He kept finding work. I think it was the same thing. He could be charming long enough to get the job and then not. So anyway, he comes home from work early for whatever reason and found his wife in bed with a young woman who was 17 years old. So he flew into a rage and beat both of them. It appears that at some point in 1978, Charlene got pregnant and had an abortion. And stories vary on whether Gerald did not want a child and forced her to get an abortion, or she did not want to bear his child and she made the decision. On September 11th of 1978, Gerald and Charlene decided it was time to more actively seek out Gerald's perfect sex slave. So they had a 1973 van and they just drove around looking for young girls. So they spotted 2 girls, and 17-year-old Rhonda Scheffler and 16-year-old Kippy Vaught. So Charlene got out of the van because, of course, a woman approaching them makes it more accessible, feels more safe if you're approached by a woman. So she approached the girls and asked them if they wanted to get in the van and smoke pot with her. And they were like, sure. So when they get in the back of the van, Gerald is there with a gun, and he forces them to lie face down while he binds their hands and feet with tape. Charlene watches over them in the back while Gerald drives the van to a more remote area. Once he found one, this is just odd, he unbound their feet and led them off into the wooded area and told Charlene to stay with the van. He comes back with them. Then he makes Charlene drive them to another wooded area where he took them out of the van and shot them and buried them. What I don't understand is why he didn't leave them at the first wooded area.
Yeah.
It's like but that's a pattern that repeats. 2 days later, the bodies were found by 2 migrant workers. That's a treat.
Oh, yeah. Because I could just say, who are they going to accuse first?
Right. That does not appear to have happened.
Okay, good. But
yeah. So that was September 13th, the bodies were found. On September 27th, that daughter by his first wife filed sexual abuse charges against her father. On the 30th, Gerald and Charlene wed and then fled to Texas. That fall, Charlene stole her cousin's ID and Gerald stole his identity, becoming Stephen Feil. F-E-I-L.
Okay.
I think it rhymes with veil, but what do I know? The following year, 1979, in June, they're now in Nevada, and Gerald wants to try again with another girl. He always says he wants a sex slave, but they always pick up 2. They go to the Washoe, W-A-S-H-O-E. I don't know Nevada well enough to know how to pronounce that. They go to the county fair, and again, Gerald sends Charlene out to look for girls. So she finds 14-year-old Brenda Lynn Judd and 13-year-old Sandra Kay Colley, and she offers them a job and says, we'll pay you to put flyers on the windshields of the cars in the parking lot. The girls are like, sure. She's like, come on out to the van and I'll get the flyers for you. Oh, hi. Here's Gerald with a gun. So once again, he binds their hands and feet, and Charlene drives the van for hours as he sexually assaults the girls in the back of the van. He eventually directs Charlene to drive them to the high desert, where he takes the girls out one at a time with a gun and a shovel, and he's the only one who comes back.
Mm-hmm.
In 1979, they moved back to Sacramento. Gerald has an affair with a woman named Patty who gets pregnant. It's not clear if he ever knew that she was pregnant, but she had his child.
Okay.
We don't actually hear any more about Patty, but I'm like, not only he has a side piece. What is made him, anyway. I can't even finish a fucking sentence. It's so irritating. So in April of 1980, Gerald is ready to try again. They've got the same van. They use even the same come smoke a joint with us ploy. This time, they bring in 17-year-old Karen Chipman Twiggs and 17-year-old Stacy Ann Redican, who they spot walking out of a bookstore. That pisses me off. That could have been me. Walking out of a bookstore. And asking me if I want to smoke pot. In a van with strangers. Okay, maybe not, but still.
No
maybe.
comment. Okay, here's the thing. I was smart enough not to get into anybody's vehicle or go into anything. I'm like, sure, you want to bring that pot over here? Let's hook that up. But I did one time get into, my friend and I were walking to like a store along some highway, and then there was an ambulance pulled over, and one of the ambulance guys said, hey, we'll pay you each $10 if you let us like practice some things on you. And we got in because they were ambulance drivers. And the thing is, they legit they were practicing taking blood pressure and stuff like that. They paid us $10. But how wrong could that have gone? Because me, who had evaded kidnappers before, went, well, it's ambulance drivers.
They're safe.
Right.
Oh my God.
So that's the dumbest thing I probably ever did like that.
Well, so they get these two girls in. He's got the gun. Charlene drives while he assaults the girls in the back. When he's done, she drives to a secluded area where he again takes the girls out one at a time. This time, however, he makes Charlene get out of the car and come view the graves when he's done. So the remains of these two girls aren't found until July 27th by picnickers. I thought that was an odd factoid to add. I mean, let's
like
go
one
for
of the
a picnic.
ones they always like to say that they're doing it, because I had like the one in Australia. It was like a man out gathering firewood.
Yes.
Like, okay.
So sometime in 1980, Charlene is pregnant again. That's in May. Charlene is pregnant again in May. In June, they remarry, this time using his alias.
I mean, he's clearly having sex, though. Like this whole I need a sex slave and all that stuff. You're having sex because she's getting pregnant.
Yeah. So on June 7th, they spot a young woman hitchhiking alone. It's 21-year-old Linda Aguilar. And they pick her up. So there is a point, the point was made that she was pregnant. But as I read it, it turns out this woman was 4 months pregnant. So it's entirely possible it wasn't in any, and she was 21. It probably was not visible.
Mm-hmm.
So
and if it was her first.
So it was a 21-year-old hitchhiking alone. So of course, they pick her up. He gets out his gun, and Charlene is driving while Gerald raped, beat, and strangled Linda. They dumped her on a beach where German tourists discovered her 2 weeks later. But the really sad thing is she hadn't been dead when they dumped her. Mm-hmm. But because of her injuries and she was disoriented, she suffocated on the sand.
That's terrible.
That is absolutely abysmal.
Also, welcome to America, German tourists.
Yeah. July 17th, 1980, Gerald celebrates his birthday by abducting, raping, and killing a woman who worked as a bartender. Her name was Virginia Michelle, who had served both of them drinks several times. But they happened to see her walking out of the car at the right time for them, wrong time for her. Her body isn't discovered until early October. On November 2nd, 1980, in the wee hours of the morning, Gerald wants to go hunting again, so he and Charlene are out. 22-year-old Craig Miller and his fiancée, 21-year-old Mary Elizabeth Sowers, were standing on the street. They'd apparently just walked out from a fraternity party. Feeling invincible, this time Gerald doesn't send Charlene out this time. He gets out of the car, walks up to them, shows them the gun, and forces them at gunpoint into his vehicle. He doesn't realize friends of theirs see what happens. And
they're leaving a party. There's all these people.
And they wrote down his license plate number.
Ooh.
So Gerald first drives to a secluded area, forces Craig out of the car, and shoots him 3 times in the head in full view of the fiancé. He then, and this is the episode where he's veering from his pattern. Mm-hmm. There's a D word that I can't come up with.
When it becomes disorganized, then that's where you get caught,
yes.
Right?
So he approaches them. Instead of doing whatever in the woods, he makes Charlene drive them back to their apartment, where he took Sowers into the bedroom and abused her for hours. Then Charlene drove him to an isolated rural area where he shot and killed Sowers. When the friends reported the couple missing, when they didn't show up the next day, they didn't do anything immediately, but when they didn't, it wouldn't have helped.
They were adults and they climbed into a vehicle.
Yes.
It was smart of them to take that just in case, though. Wow, you know?
So the police followed up on it and were able to get warrants to search Gerald and Charlene's home and vehicle, or there's just fucking evidence galore. There's shell casings, there's blood,
body fluids,
everything. When they interrogated, and at first they couldn't, at first when they were questioned, neither one of them would speak. However, Charlene was offered leniency in return for testifying. So she spilled her guts.
Mm-hmm.
Fun fact, as Nikki would say, in June of 1983, Gerald was convicted of the murder of Miller and Sowers in California and was sentenced to death. He was then tried for the murder of Twiggs and Redican in Nevada. Now, this trial, where this took place, was a very small town, and authorities were worried that they didn't have enough money to prosecute the case. Public sentiment at that time was so outraged at what Gerald had done that the general public just fucking sent money in.
Mm-hmm.
They donated...
I've seen that a little here and there.
$20,000 to help fund the case. And this is really... I didn't know this until I started doing this podcast. It's very unusual for someone to even be tried a second time if they've been convicted and given the death penalty, because they're like, what does it matter?
I mean, especially if you don't have the funding, because I've seen them. Yes. All right, now send them here about the big killers, and they're like, because we want our blood here too.
Yes,
because these victims want theirs.
So he did get a second death sentence in Nevada. So the Nevada death sentence was later overturned, not the conviction, but the sentencing. He had a retrial for the sentencing, and the second jury gave him the death penalty. I'm like, fucker, give it up. He died on July 18th, 2002 in prison of rectal, lung, and liver cancers.
Oh.
Yeah. Couldn't happen to
I was going to say something, and I was like, don't say that out loud. That's bad karma. but you know.
Huh. Wow.
That was karma in itself, so.
It actually... I saw, that was the first reference I saw to it. I saw a reference to it later. It was actually rectal cancer that spread to his liver and his lungs.
Okay.
So, Charlene was sentenced to 16 years and 8 months in Nevada. She wasn't ever tried in California. She was, because of her testimony.
Mm-hmm.
She was released from prison in July of 1997 and has kept, I don't know if she got custody of her son. He would have been over 16 at that time.
I get that she was abused and whatnot, but that's always, there's a lot of these relationships, right? And even when it's male-male, a lot of times one is dominant over the other, right? And so if you can figure out which one that is, then you get the other one to testify, you give them a lesser. But it's like, but you still allow these other people to be victimized instead of just yourself, and that still makes you a pretty shit human.
Yeah. She,
13 and 14-year-old girl.
Yeah. And 16 and 17-year-old girl.
Mm-hmm.
A 21-year-old,
right?
Pregnant woman. The oldest one was the bartender because I think she was 34. She did study. She got her degree while she was in prison. She had to say she would never go back to the state of California. And she's basically fallen off the radar. I'm not surprised she's hiding. Now, she has come out and said she was a victim. And I get that she was being abused, but the same thing. It's one thing to allow yourself to be abused. It's another to allow your children or someone else.
That's what gets me the same way too, is I'm like, it's one thing when you're taking it. It's another when you let it happen to somebody that you can be you're in a dominant position over.
It's also interesting kind of on this topic, the way all these articles were written. And my sources were Wikipedia and Murderpedia. And Murderpedia often is a collection of articles. So, but if they're not, I can't credit who wrote the original if it doesn't say on
Right.
Murderpedia. Every single one was written from the perspective of him being dominant. No one ever, she was just along for the ride the way it was written.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, I mean, she was released in 97. That was 25 years ago. We're never going to know. Was she really, what really happened? Unless, now there have been some books written about this particular case, but none of them are written from her point of view. None of them are written after interviewing her.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll never, and it just, I wish I could know. I wish I could know what really happened. But yeah, they killed 10 people, 11 if you count the unborn child.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just insane. So yeah, that was my light. I go from the light and fluffy to the, oh, yuck.
This isn't light and fluffy, but it's not a serial killer or anything like that. It's more sad. So
Oh, good.
Yay! I'm talking about Mata Hari. So her real name, Margaretha Gertruida Zella, and then MacLeod ultimately was born August 7th, 1876 in the Netherlands. She had 3 younger brothers, and her nickname was Magritte, and that's what I'm calling her until she becomes Mata Hari, because her parents were both Dutch, though for her stage appearance, she would later claim otherwise. We'll talk about that more. Her dad was an investor and owner of a hat shop, but he invested in like oil and stuff like that.
Ooh.
So he actually did really well financially for a while, and she was very spoiled. She was his only daughter. She was his oldest. So he brought her something called a Bokenwagen, and that's a goat-drawn cart. And she had lavish dresses. She'd take them to school, and she had, she'd go into school and have these lovely dresses. But when she was 13, his investments went south. He went bankrupt. Lost everything. After the bankruptcy, her parents got a divorce, and within 2 years, her mother was dead.
Ooh.
It didn't say what she died of, but it's, like natural. It's not like he murdered her or anything. Though her father remarried, the kids were split up and sent away. It didn't say why. It just said the family fell apart. And I'm like, so stepmom didn't want 4 kids.
How very Cinderella.
Yeah. The kids were split up and sent to various relatives to live out the rest of their lives. So I don't even know that they saw each other. I have no
could
idea.
they not marry and have their own lives, or?
Who?
The kids, because you said no, you said they were sent to live with relatives for the rest of their lives, like it was a sentence.
The rest of their young lives.
Okay.
So in other words, it wasn't,
right.
Go live with these relatives while we get some shit straight, get our
Right.
money together. It was, bye. That's it. Magritte's godfather, Mr. Visser. It was funny, like they named a couple people and it was Mr. And then it was like no first name. So
What was
Mr.
his
Visser.
Mr.
Visser.
I was like, Mr. Vister?
Mr. Visser's sister took her in and sent her to study to be a kindergarten teacher. So there was like a school specifically for kindergarten teachers. However, the headmaster behaved inappropriately, actively pursuing her. And when this scandal broke at the school, she was expelled. He remained to teach. After this, she was either sent to her uncle's or she fled there. Stories differed, so it's like, yeah. Mm-hmm. She was somewhere between 15 and 18 when this happened. It didn't say like exactly what year, but I know it was after she was 15. And then when she was 18 years old, she saw an ad from a Dutch colonial army captain named Rudolf MacLeod. He had been stationed in the Dutch East Indies, which is modern-day Indonesia, it said, for the last 16 years. But he came to Amsterdam for their marriage, July 11th, 1895. I read, like, one of the articles said it was actually a joke a friend had done, putting that ad out there.
So she was a mail order bride?
Yes.
Of a sort.
Sort of. He was in the Dutch upper class, and they were financially comfortable. So this works out for her, right? She's upper class now.
A very nice change.
Right.
We're back to her origin.
Yeah. Together, they had 2 children, Norman John in 1897 and Jean in it's like Jean Louise in 1898. But his is hyphenated and hers isn't. So... They moved to Malay somewhere in there. This further trapped her in a home with a man who turned out to be an alcoholic and abuser. And one preserved letter, recently they found some of her letters because she wrote them like prolifically to people. Wow. And so they have found some of her letters. So in one preserved letter, she says he came after her with a bread knife and tried to kill her in that one. And they were calling it something like sun sickness or something like that. And she was like, yeah, no. Basically, that was the attitude in that letter. She was like, that's some bullshit. He felt it was her fault that he hadn't received a promotion. In the meantime, he openly had a concubine because it was allowed and acceptable in Malay at that time.
Oh.
So he contracted syphilis.
Oh.
And she briefly left him at one point and moved in with another Dutch officer that was there. And during this time, she joined a local dance company and she started studying the local culture. And this is kind of what she sunk into during this time. And she would later claim it as her own, which would ultimately be used against her. Her husband eventually convinced her to come back to him, promising change, but there was, of course, no change. Oh. And in 1899, their children both got really sick. The reason for their illness isn't known for certain. Some think it was due to a syphilis treatment. At that time, it was mercury. Because he had, it turned out, given her the syphilis before she had the kids, so they were birthed from somebody with syphilis. And so they had to be treated for it, and that's mercury. And that is really what the historians seem to feel happened. Okay. Now, they told everybody a house worker had poisoned their food or that an enemy of his had poisoned the children's food, but most likely it was the mercury. Whatever the cause, Norman John died from it. He was like 2 or something. Oh, God. And though Louise would survive for the time being, she would die at 21 years old, and it's felt that it was due to syphilis complications. So I hope that he enjoyed his concubine. Okie doke. Following Norman John's death, they moved back to the Netherlands and got separated, at least partially due to him blaming her for their son's death, which isn't at all true, is it? No. It took years for the divorce to be finalized, but in 1906, Magritte was free of Rudolph and was given custody of Louise. He refused to pay the child support he'd been ordered to pay, and at one point on a visitation, he just refused to return Louise to her mother. And she wasn't financially able to fight him because he went, no money. She did say that he had never harmed the children, though he was abusive to her. And so he was like, she had no choice but to let him keep Louise. She would never see her again. With no financial support from her ex-husband, Magritte moved to Paris in 1903. To make money, she first worked as a model for artists and as a horse rider in the circus. She used her married name, going by Lady MacLeod, which pissed off Rudolph and his upper crust family, and I call that a win.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that one.
Within the next year, she became a successful exotic dancer, even having a booking agent, and took the stage name Mata Hari, which meant Eye of the Day or Eye of the Dawn, which was about the rising sun in the Malay language. She debuted at the Musée. Here we go. I'm not going to pronounce any of this shit right because I don't like French, and I don't know how to do it. I can do other languages, at least loosely. Musée Guimet, or Guimet, on March 13th, 1905, becoming the mistress of Guimet himself. Guimet, blah, blah, blah. She was known for being open with her body, even posing for nude photographs. There's one on Wikipedia she's bottomless, but we'll describe this here. But there is still these photos of her. Uh-huh. So, which Rudolph used some of those photos. He was able to get his hands on some, and then he was able to make it official that he had custody of their daughter.
Of course.
Yep. And she was also known for being promiscuous, but it was her openness, flirtatiousness, charm, and exotic looks and act that made her so popular. Here's the thing. When you look at her pictures, I can see why she was able to pull off that she might have been part Malay or whatever. Oh. So it's interesting. I expect a blonde with pale skin from the Netherlands.
Dutch, yes.
So, yeah, that was surprising. So she was very much able to use that in her favor, which is basically brown face, but okay. That and the fact that she's basically credited with inventing the striptease as performance art.
Oh.
This was the time where she started claiming to be. She actually said she was a Javanese princess. She said something about being born on the steps of a Hindu temple. She was taking all this stuff to become exotic and make this act for herself.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. It was actually very common for women in performance industries to do stuff like that at the time in Europe. Her act involved like layers of clothing and scarves coming off. But because she was uncomfortable with being small-breasted, and honestly, I was like, I looked at one picture and she's in like the gowns then where it was all pushed up. I'm like, she's not that small-chested. Then you see the picture, and I'll post these. Mm-hmm. You see the pictures that she was pretty small-chested. So, not even a B cup, I don't think.
But back then, boobies were not everywhere like they are now.
It wasn't right.
There was no Cinemax.
Yeah. but she would wear a metal jeweled breastplate, or she would wear like beaded covering. So though the bottoms were completely off, by the end, she always had a top on.
Interesting.
Yes, that's how insecure she was about it.
Wow.
She not only raised the status of erotic dance, but her own status circulating in prestigious French circles as this performer, right?
Yep.
But these circles were fickle. And in 1910, she started getting criticism and mockery, claiming she couldn't dance. Because people were copying her now, and some of them came at that from an actual dance background or a more legitimate background. She started later in age.
Yes.
For that time, and she started to gain a little bit of weight and stuff like that.
And she basically started to do it to fucking put a roof over her head and feed herself. She didn't start doing it as an art form. She did it to survive.
Right. So, So 1910 is going downhill. In 1912, her career really starts the downward spiral, and her final performance is on March 13th, 1915. Luckily, though she had gained some weight and lost her place in the dance community, she had established courtesan relationships with many rich and powerful men, including some military figures from a variety of countries, because she traveled a lot for this. And here's the thing, her exotic dance, she was being booked in opera halls. She was being booked in actual upper crust places to do this dance. So she achieved something,
just like our opera singer from last week.
So these relationships are ultimately what would lead to her ill fate. Though she'd lived in Paris for quite some time and lived in Malay for a time, she never gained citizenship anywhere. So she was a Dutch subject.
Oh,
still.
okay.
And the reason that's important is we have World War I. Right? That's what's happening. And the Netherlands was neutral. Netherlands was Switzerland in World War I, which meant she was still actually free to travel places that other people were restricted on. So she could still keep going and doing this courtesan thing. And she did. She fell in love with a Russian soldier who was fighting for the French named Captain Vadim Maslov. He was 23, so he was younger than her at that point. But when he was sent to the Western Front in 1916, he got shot down. He was a pilot, and he lost part of his eyesight, had some other issues, but that was like the big thing. She requested to visit him at the hospital tent or whatever it was on the Western Front. And an agent from who the fuck knows how to pronounce this, Deuxième Bureau de l'État Major General, a French intelligence agency at the time, told her she could if she agreed to spy for the French against Germany using her connections. She had the unique position of having performed for Wilhelm, son of Kaiser Wilhelm II, making him technically a crown prince and a general on the Western Front. Unfortunately, this Deuxième Bureau or whatever was too dumb to realize how German propaganda worked, which we'd learn much more about in World War II. And they had made him look like he was this big, he was in control of this whole portion of the Western Front, and he was great at mapping out where they were going to do, and where this was pure propaganda.
He was not.
He was basically the rich figurehead.
Oh.
Okay? So she's supposed to infiltrate. And at the same time, while they're trying to get this, he was actively working to have his father declared insane. Like, he was working with these people below him, trying to get him to be declared insane so that then Wilhelm here could take the place as German Emperor and King of Prussia. And I will say that Kaiser, then he ended up being the last German Emperor, King of Prussia. Then they didn't have an emperor anymore, right? In addition to getting to visit the man she considered the love of her life, she would be paid 1 million francs with the expectation that she would seduce Wilhelm and feed her French contact, Captain Georges Ladeau, intelligence on German military movements and plans. This offer was made in the summer, so remember Ladeau's name. But by November, so the offer was made in September, I need people to hear this, but by November of that same year, she had been arrested when she stepped off a boat in England, moved to London, and interrogated by a New Scotland Yard commissioner. She was accused of counter-espionage in the form of spying on the French for the Germans. This commissioner, Sir Basil Thompson, I love the name Basil, said she admitted to working with the Deuxième Bureau, but it is questioned whether anything she'd said about the Bureau was true or whether she thought it would make her look better. The Bureau, of course, did not back her up, but why would they?
Yeah.
But yep, that's our spy. Like, that's not how it ever worked.
No.
Freed in this instance, she tried to set up a meeting with the Crown Prince again, offering secrets in exchange for money. The major with whom she met sent a message to Berlin via radio describing the woman he was working with and saying she was being helpful. So he didn't use her name, but he basically made the biography very clear. He called her Agent H21, I believe, in the messages. The messages were sent in a code the French had already broken and that the Germans already knew had been broken.
Oh.
This is one of the things that casts some doubt on whether she was ever a double agent.
I'm like, ugh.
So there is speculation that he knew she was a French spy. And of course, she's not good at it. She hasn't been trained.
No.
So she's like, hey, give me some money and get me in to see him and I'll give you some secrets. It sounds to me like she was desperately trying to prove to them that she wasn't.
Yeah.
Yes. And just not good at it. So they think that the Germans figured it out. Now, historians looking back and set her up to get her busted by the French. She was referred to in those messages again as Agent H21. I was like, H20, like, what does the H stand for? Holland 21? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
It was felt that the chief intelligence officer of the German army, General Walter Nicolai, or Walter, was irritated that Mata Hari was only passing on idle gossip. I think that's how she was getting in. She's like, I have secrets to tell you. And then she'd tell him, but it was like who these military officers were sleeping with on their wives, and stuff like that. So that was her way of being like, I'm giving you information, but I'm not giving you real information. And so, yeah, he was like, okay, we're going to make it look like you're a double agent. As a test, the Second Bureau of the French War Ministry allowed Mata Hari to acquire the names of 6 Belgian spies. That's all they said. They allowed her to acquire the names. Like, they didn't give it to her. They arranged for this somehow. This was in December 1916. 5 of these spies were thought to be double agents, actually working to benefit the Germans. One of them was suspected of being a double agent for the French, against the Germans. Within 2 weeks of her getting the information, the double agent in favor of the French was dead. To French authorities, this was the proof they needed. They arrested her again on February. Never mind that it could have been broken open in so many other ways. They knew who their people were, right?
All these double agents is making my head hurt.
It's like a bad spy film. So they arrested her again on February 13th, 1917. This time she was tried on the basis that she was spying for the Germans and had caused the deaths of 50,000 soldiers, was the accusation, because she had revealed a tank the Allies were planning to use. And I was like, how the fuck would she know? Okay. One of the ways this was said to have been done was by her revealing that tank to whoever she was talking to. The last thing she'd gone to was Madrid. So, I don't know. They had zero evidence against her in court. Like, now it's all, there's paper, it's all released. They had no actual hard evidence that she was the double agent. But the fact that she'd lied about being a Javanese princess and created this whole false... now you see where that comes around the bite. They said, well, this shows a history of lies. She's clearly a duplicitous woman.
Clearly.
Yep. In addition, it was discovered she had taken 20,000 francs from a German diplomat at some point during this. And she said, yeah, I did, because my shit got stolen. And he was one of my old lovers of mine. And he gave me money to financially help me get back home and get some more stuff because they stole my trunks. So she said, yeah, I got money from him. You guys know I've long been in a relationship with him. And that was part of her problem later. It said that how she kind of ended herself was that she didn't sever these ties when the war was on, but she was from a neutral country.
Right.
So,
oh my God, this is just so twisty and turny.
Yes. All right.
I think I'm sorry, I need a flow chart.
You know what? There's shit I'm leaving out too, because I was like, I think that we can get the point here. The process, because there was a lot also about, we'll go into it a little bit, but there's a lot about shit that was going wrong in the war and, war politics and stuff. And I was like, nobody needs that. Okay. The prosecutor, of course, spun it and said that that was her being paid to spy for Germany. So, though I just, 20,000, they had offered her 1 million francs. Why would she turn on them for 20,000 francs?
Yeah, that
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, none of it adds up. So, Ledoux, her French contact, tampered with evidence and spun what she had done in her time with him. Again, he's the one who approached her and said, hey, do this for us. He managed to twist all the stuff that she'd done with him. And it is known that he tampered with evidence in order to make her look guilty. The fact of the matter was that the French were deeply strained at this time. There had been mutinies by the French soldiers on the Western Front after some major losses, later referred to as the Great Mutinies. The government changed power, and the army and citizens were suffering from the ongoing warfare, and the person who came into power needed to do something swift and decisive, yes? Because that's usually how it works, to get everybody back on board, to raise morale. Because of her fame, everybody knew who she was, and her representation of so-called loose morals is how they were twisting it, even though they'd all fucking been there.
Yep.
Gasp. I wrote, a sexually promiscuous woman who held power. Right? Like, how dare she? And the fact that she was not a French citizen, meaning they could therefore blame the failure of the French at war on an outsider.
Yes.
Raise morale some more. And one that had already been under criticism for a role in the erotic dance world. It was perfect for them. Meanwhile, Mata Hari is claiming she was never aiding Germany, right? She was quoted as saying, a harlot, yes, but a traitoress, never, while on trial. She wrote desperate letters to the Dutch ambassador in Paris, pleading her case. Not only did she get no aid from the ambassador, but her lover, Maslow, who she had gotten into this situation in order to visit in the medical on the Western Front, refused to speak in favor at trial. He had become deeply troubled, they said, with his injuries and his new disability, so I'm thinking PTSD shit. Yeah. And so he's deep in his self-pity. He's not in a good place mentally.
It was obviously a head injury if he lost his eyesight. So it could have been...
Well, he said, I don't care what happens to her.
Fuck him.
Yes. And
fuck
so
him and his traumatic
they were like,
injury.
it said that she fainted when she heard that he turned on her this way. Also, it was pointed out, they never brought that German diplomat about the 20,000 francs. They never questioned him. They never asked him what that money was for, and they did not bring him onto the stand. Her lawyer, here's why. Her lawyer wasn't allowed to bring his own witnesses in or to cross-examine the prosecution's witnesses. She was depicted as a woman using men and using her own sexuality to wrong them. She was a predator, is what they made it look like, and a filthy predator at that. Looking back, historians have said the opposite was really true, that she was naive, just trying to make it in life against steep odds due to her gender, that naivete coming into play, not severing ties with people so that she could get in trouble because she's still seeing this German person, right? And yeah, she was ultimately a victim of the men around her, not the other way around. The starting with the fucking schoolmaster.
Yep.
Like, she didn't have a chance. And like so many ways, this is so standard, right? In its own way. It's just that she built herself to this bigger place briefly.
Right.
And had kind of a little bit of power briefly because of this. So sadly, she was quickly convicted. And October 15th, 1917, she was marched in front of a firing squad, dressed in a suit and tricorn hat, by most accounts. She refused the blindfold and blew the soldiers a kiss before they fired. Mad respect, girl. She held it. Like the press pointed out, she held her head high. She never let it drop. When the volley of shots came, she dropped straight down to her knees and then fell over backward. And then another officer walked up with a revolver and shot her in the head to ensure she was dead. But she never let them see that they'd taken her.
Good on her.
Mm-hmm. The blowing the kiss. It's so good. I'd like to do that instead of flipping people off in road issues because that really fucking pisses them off. Yeah. Because it's flippant. That's why. If you flip them off, you're mad too. So, Mata Hari was 41 years old when she was executed. Wow. Her family did not claim her remains. Aww. So she was given over for medical studies. Her head, donated to the Museum of Anatomy, disappeared sometime between 1954 and 2000. And the reason those are the dates is they discovered it was missing in 2000. And they think it's when they moved the museum stuff in 54. It's never been found. They supposedly had the rest of her body or parts of the rest of her body. That's never been found. Documents related to Mata Hari
Ew.
were declassified in 2017 by the French and released by MI5. The Mata Hari Foundation, after poring over the over 1,200 pages, requested her exoneration as they feel the evidence proves she was not a double agent. Most historians agree. Because here's the thing. Most people know her as a double agent. That's how she's gone down.
Right.
Mata Hari has become a descriptor.
Yeah, it's a synonym now.
And
it's
you
a
say
symbol.
Mata Hari, everybody goes, oh, I know what she did.
Yep.
But it turns out
She didn't.
most people believe she didn't. And I was watching like a YouTube video, but it was an hour long and I found it near the end. I wanted to find, I haven't seen that she has been exonerated or anything yet. I haven't seen what's happened with that. I would like to know that. But the son of Ladou, or whatever his name was, he was on there. I think it was him. It was one of those people that was very integral to her going down. And from the way he was talking, it sounded to me like he still thought she'd done it, but he's like, number one. And I'm like, first of all, your father was a douche. So maybe you shouldn't just fall for what he says. But my sources, Wikipedia, history, biography, and thought catalog. So it's sad. Her daughter died about 2 years after she was killed by the firing squad. Mm-hmm. It upset me because I was like, wait, I wanted to know, I wanted the father to have died, the husband
The
to have died first, because I felt like he could get so much satisfaction out of seeing what happened to her. But as far as I could tell, he did not predecease her. And I thought it sucked that nobody claimed her body.
That really
after being
sucks.
wrongly murdered by a bunch of men who conspired against her, in my opinion. She deserved to be buried.
A bunch of men who
cremated.
are fucking up their own jobs and just needed a scapegoat.
Yeah. High profile men who enjoyed her company, some of them.
Oh, yeah.
When it was beneficial to them. Like, the sooner women learn that your vagina doesn't earn you loyalty, the better off we'll all be. Because a lot of times it's the way women try and get that. They're like, I'm giving you this, so you will like me. Yeah. It doesn't get you any sort of loyalty. So her story's sad.
It is.
And I really didn't know that she probably wasn't a double agent.
Well, I was looking at, I frequently will, when I'm searching for stuff, I'll put in female as one of my search terms. And I came across a couple of lists of famous female, whatever. And Mata Hari was on a couple of those lists. And I was like, nope, I'll come back to that later, baby. But now I will not.
That was the thing. I started reading it, and then one of the articles I found was the Mata, one of the first ones I found, because I was like, probably not. I'll do this other one.
Right.
And then was Mata Hari truly a double agent, or was she, whatever? Was she turned on? Was she a victim? And I was like, oh, now I need to know more. So I did it. But I have, the photos of her are amazing. So I'll be posting some of those. Some of those have been colorized and stuff like that. Wow. It's pretty neat. So
I will look forward to seeing those.
Yes. And then, of course, she was very upper crust when she was in her own clothing. So long fur coats and stuff like that. There was one existing video of her, by the way. If anybody, it was on YouTube. There is one known existing video, and it's just her walking and getting into one of those old cars. But I was like, yay! Because it's always a little bit cool to be able to see it. Just that slight jerky video of somebody.
Because I was like, is it her dancing?
I wanted it to be her dancing. That's why I was like, yes! And I went and looked at it, and I was like, damn it.
You're like, oh, no.
And I will not be posting the bottomless one because I just got my full rights back from getting penalized for a serial killer meme. Because satire is lost.
Yes.
And the thing is, whatever I got in trouble for, I fought it. They said, okay, you're right. It's overturned. And then a week later, it was back on me. So for 30 days, myself and all my pages, including the podcast, were in trouble. So no bottomless picture for you. I mean, you don't see here's the thing. It's well done. And they said that a lot of historians looking back think that she actually had like a skin-colored body stocking she had under everything.
That could be.
Because I was like, man, she's really hairless for like that day and age, isn't she? So it would actually make sense, but I can see her belly button. So I don't know. I was confused by the fact that I could see her belly button, but you just kind of see a little light shadow and like no shape, right?
Right.
Because she's standing with her arms outspread in a big scarf or whatever, big gauzy thing. And she's got that jeweled breastplate on. And she had her arm jewelry and her head jewelry and all that.
I think I've seen some of these and wondered, why is she wearing a top when she's bottomless? That just seems so odd.
Yeah.
But
and
now
honestly,
I know.
I'm like, I don't think the men would have given a shit that you were in
Yeah.
A cup. You know, like they would have still been like boobies because people like boobies. But no, she was very, very uncomfortable about that. And since I was a B cup and I was very, very uncomfortable with how small they were and still have issues with my self-esteem there, even though they're not even B's anymore. They're bigger. But, you know, like, I will always be that small-breasted teenager being made fun of. So I get it, too.
Mm-hmm. I had a friend who had been married and not like 30 years or anything, but she and her husband had been married for a while and they got a divorce. And she was dating. And she came from a very religious, kind of restrictive, like had to wear dresses to school background. And she's your age or possibly younger. So I was talking to her once. We were out and it was after she'd started dating again. And I said, so let me ask you something. What is it like to get naked in front of someone, in front of somebody new?
Yeah.
I said, you know, because you think about it, your husband met you when you were young and hot, and now I said, don't get me wrong, you're certainly,
right.
compared to me, you are still very young and very
You're
hot.
not nubile and 20.
Yeah. So, and you've had kids, you know, your body has changed. And she looked at me and she said, MB, men do not care. You're naked. That's really it. They don't, you could have 3 boobs. You could have 1.
Well, that would be better.
They're like, she's like, they don't even give a singular shit. And I've had a second friend who got divorced who verified that for me. They're like, yeah, she's like, yeah, they don't even care.
So because I never shut my brain off, when I was going to the gym on the regular, I started paying attention to where the men were paying attention out of curiosity.
Oh.
And it wasn't, if there was somebody with super tight clothing, but it was mostly covered. She had long sleeves on. She had this and that. So eventually I adjusted what I was wearing to the gym so that people would leave me alone.
Right.
I had these long sleeve things and long pants. But if she was in extremely slinky clothes, but this woman next to her was showing more skin, even if her clothes were looser, they looked where the skin was.
Huh.
It was fascinating.
That is kind of interesting.
Yes. I don't know, just a random thing. Like, it's not an actual study or anything, but you know, it's like, I paid attention, like, always when I was there. I'd see somebody and be like, okay, I can tell now she's the one who's going to draw the eyes when she's in here, even though they were looking at this chick before or whatever. And sure enough, I had it down pat. It was the skin.
Huh.
It was like a percentage.
I'm sure someone has done a study on that.
Who knows? They don't do studies on useful things, but only things that affect men. So
the fact that they get erections when they smell cinnamon rolls.
That's why I was reminding Jeffrey of that study before, because it's thieves oil. And it has like cloves and stuff like that in it. And I was trying to use it for acne, but I have really sensitive skin and it was burning the shit out of my flesh. Then I'd have burns on my face. But anyway, like I'd climb into bed having put that on after I washed my face or whatever. He'd be like, what's that? It was great because then I read that study and I was like, aha. Like women put the flowery smells and the lavender. No. That's not working for dudes. That's working for you, which means great, do it. But that's not working for dudes. Smell like food. Smell like cinnamon and cloves.
Yep.
And those were like proven things that I was like, you have my attention.
Well, remember the old, I don't know, it was probably in the Beverly Hillbillies or something like that, putting a little vanilla extract behind your ears instead of perfume.
Yeah, there you go.
So
vanilla was huge in the 90s and like lotion
everywhere,
everything.
And it stank.
The thing is, if it's done wrong, they're like aging vanilla on your body is not a great smell.
Oh, no, and there are obviously, if
there are people
is done
it works
right,
with.
yeah, and it depends on your body chemistry.
Yes.
I had a friend who when her grandmother died, she inherited her grandmother's bottle of Chanel No. 5. And she was this was the scent she associated with the grandmother. She was so ecstatic. And she gets it home and she puts it on and it smelled like mosquito repellent.
I've never tried, but my grandma, I think it was Shalimar or something with my grandma. And like my mom didn't wear it either, but both of us, like that was connected with her. And I was like, I don't want to know if it doesn't work for me. So, because it was her like signature fragrance. Like that's how she smelled. And it wasn't never overpowering. She had it down how she did it. It's pleasant, but
I admire people who have a signature fragrance.
I admire people who have a signature anything, honestly, about themselves. I posted this week. What is it? I admire people who have a hairstyle. I don't have a style. I have hair, and I'm lucky if there's no caterpillars in it.
Yes, I love that.
It's very true for me and our troubled relationship.
I like it short enough so I can, when I get out of the shower, I just run my fingers through it and go, yeah, it's not sticking up too bad.
That's great.
Go out with my day.
Yeah. So, all right, folks, we're at the end. At least that was ended on it's somewhat positive.
Yes.
Smelling like food. Yes. Who we all should. I'm sure I would like somebody smelling like food.
It depends what food. Well, you would not.
If it was barbecue, I'd be like, take me now. You know, I love me some barbecue.
I do know you love barbecue.
No, actually, I have scent like leather works for me because Jeffrey had a very specific scent when we were dating because he had a leather coat. And he had
I get it.
The old ancient 76 Chevy Blazer. It was there was a certain amount of like gasoline smell or whatever, like oil smell. There was this great like masculine mix.
Yeah, I know the type of.
And he actually had a cologne, again, never overpowering, but like all that worked together. If I smelled that right now, probably my brain would be like, fuck yes.
I'd be sitting here alone.
It's true.
Going, how do I turn this thing off?
If there was also barbecue.
Oh my God.
No, I won't make it tacky.
Like, is he out there taking notes?
He's like rubbing a leather jacket on his chest right now.
He's rubbing pulled pork under his arm. Dabbing barbecue sauce.
Please don't rub the pork on you. That's not what's going to work. It's the sauce and the smoke.
But rubbing the sauce behind his ears.
It's like, and everywhere else, probably. Barbecue sauce. Right?
Well, this has been a very, very heavy, serious episode.
Your mother is a hamster.
This is the one we'll send to the Nobel Committee.
Which one are we going for?
All of them. Genetics.
There you go. We haven't asked a question in a very long time. I want to know what scent gets you going. A memory scent. Like, I want to know.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Oh my God. Thank you for joining us. And we'll be back
Check
next
it out
week.
on buymeacoffee.com/MM Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram or at our website, mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
Please like, rate, and review, follow, and share wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.
Thank you for listening and supporting our podcast. We'll be back next week with more shenanigans.